Hi and good afternoon. It's coming up to 3 o'clock and that means it's time for IG Live with Nigel Burney and my special guest Mark Shipman, and hopefully Mark will join us shortly. But a big hello to both Howard and Dave, Natalie, my wife, obviously keeping an eye on me today, Imogen, good to see you, David, lovely to have you back, Presh, lovely, so many people already, Rodney, good that you could join. So today's going to be really interesting. Mark and I don't know if you caught a few of the things we want to talk about today. We gave a short speech last night at about 6:30 just to go over a number of topics that we want to talk about. Hi there to Harry and Rosie and Nikki, Sam, a couple of Sams. Lovely that you could all join us. And Howard, yes, you can dip in and out. I've got no issues with you dipping in and out. Anytime you want to come. Hi, Jason. So all we're waiting for is, of course, Mark himself. So hopefully I haven't already landed the knockout blow and he fails to appear at his 3 o'clock. But I'm sure that Imogen, for example, will be chasing him on his mobile saying, Mark, we're waiting for you. We're waiting to begin our good old boxing time. Hi, Bradley. Good to see you. Perry, it's so sweet of you to join. And Charles. And hi there, Freya, lovely that you could join us too. So we're waiting for the maestro himself, the heavyweight, and that is Mark Shipman of Michael Elliott. So Mark, wherever you are, come out of hiding, and we're waiting. Good to see Alex is here as well, and hi there, Phil and Co, competitors I presume of Mark, but we're not going to say that now, are we? But anyway, Mark is joining, and shall I let him in? Yeah, go on then. We might as well. Let's go live. Any second now, Mark will join us. Hi there to Steve and Cameron and to Tim. So I was worried that that was it. It was hi there, Jamie. Good to see you too. So sorry, Mark. You were late. That's good to see. Very good to see. And
can't get people off the
I
phone.
put you off. Maybe the third round was the knockout round, and I was a winner already.
Yeah. So how's it going?
It's good. It's good. We have been inundated already. We've got over 35 people already joined us, so they're keen to hear what you and I have to say this afternoon. So I could go through that big spiel that I went through last two times. Sophia says, come on, Nigel, here's a busy man. We know you're a busy man, Mark, and we are very appreciative that you found time in your diary to take yourself away from all those amazing clients that you have. So for those who don't know Mark Shipman, I'm going to give a 10-second. He is a heavyweight. He is a champion. He's been in the London-centric market in investment. I know, it's boring. We've all heard it before. He's done loads of business. Literally, he knows whatever's happening, where it's happening, and how it's happening, which is why I want to talk to Mark. And we've got loads of questions to talk about today. Mark.
And actually, I'll be asking you a few questions about your role as a developer and how you see the care market and planning process while we're under lockdown, and the debt markets, financing.
I'm happy to answer any of those questions. So just to give a flavour to those who are watching,
Dicky Whippy, Capstick Dale.
Yeah. The Suskin boys have joined us. The guys from Maria Mendoza, they've joined us. Hi there to Jack. Hi there to Etan, and of course, hi there to Dan.
I'd like to discuss with you your feeling of what we're going through at the moment, because my feeling is that we're in quite choppy waters, and occasionally we hit some calm water, and then it gets a bit rough again.
Okay,
and,
so I agree with you.
We're looking for dry land.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I was listening to a short podcast that CBRE, the valuation team, gave a couple of days ago, and the way they described it is we're at the end of the beginning as to where we are, as far as COVID-19 and its effects, which really means we've got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go, first of all, in terms of the virus and finding the the vaccine or finding a medication that can cure it. That's one issue.
I'm not sure there is a vaccine. I'm not sure there will be a vaccine. There hasn't been a vaccine for so many viruses. So
you're right. And in fact,
hi Rudy.
Hi Joel.
Farah.
Hi Cameron. Good to see you all. My brother's even turned up, and my sister. So I really am attracting the family today. But what I was going to say was that, things take time. We talked about this before. Recessions, it's quick to go into one. They're talking that we're in a depression. I mean, the Chancellor himself has described where we are now as a very, very big recession, and we've only just started. I mean, you've seen the statistics.
So Rishi Sunak turns around, he says, very deep recession, and he implies that it's over in January.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I was talking to a big accountancy firm earlier this week, and they said the same. They think that there's a very strong chance that we will come out.
Sorry,
I'm here. I haven't gone.
I'm sorry. No. So what I want to say,
there's young children out there. There's people at least aged over 10.
I apologise. So this is my take. And this is how I think things evolve. In my opinion, each time we've had a recession, and I'm quite old. I know I look super young, but I've been through 4 cycles. And
I have a poll with our audience who ask them which one looks younger, but unfortunately, I'm afraid I'm going to come out the worst of that poll, so maybe we'll have that poll. We'll have some property poll questions and the economy questions in a second.
So each time we hit a difficult moment in a cycle, there is fear. Would you agree with that? And
it's the first thing that happens.
With fear comes panic. With panic comes, I must sell my shares, I must sell my home, I must do this, I must do that. And actually the difference this time is, because we've been under lockdown, we haven't had this situation before. We've had this position where the government has stepped in to support creating furlough. But one thing that we're seeing now beyond that is redundancy. And people you and I know are being made redundant. It might be mid-40s, children, mortgage, etc., etc. They have to reinvent themselves and get back out there. I would also say that I think certain companies are using this as an excuse to streamline and improve themselves. And I think there will be victims from there. But I'm telling you, in my opinion, what will happen is panic, price reduction, June quarter day rents might not come in, fear of banks, therefore I've got to get out, I'm under pressure, I'm a motivated seller. And this is what happens every time, I'm telling you, that whether it's 1 or 2 years, you come out the other side and they go, well, that wasn't too bad. And memories are short. I'm telling you, memories are short. And what will then happen, we'll have another 4, 5, 6 years of really good time. Values go up and up and up, and we say we're not going to see them go down. It's wonderful. You know what takes over? It's human greed. Greed takes over. I've got to be richer than my neighbour. I was never like that. You might have been, but I wasn't. But human greed pushes you, and then it bursts. But let me tell you, we haven't had a nasty bubble burst since the late 80s, early 90s.
So let's talk about that. I think people can utilise the pandemic as an excuse to correct values, because the market has been heated on certain sectors, there's no doubt about it. Land values, whether we're looking at it for residential, whether we're looking at it for healthcare, they've only been going in one direction, and that's upwards. Yeah. So there's always an opportunity for correction. I think you'll find rents have been hitting all-time highs across the country in all different use classes. And I think the great thing about the pandemic is it gives an opportunity to maybe reset some of the land values, some of the rents, some of the yields. And all that does is allow all the vulture funds to come and go, do you know what, there's some value now. Let's go back in. And that's what happens.
I have one of my bigger clients who's quite well known, is extremely powerful. And the reason I'm slightly late after him, a very small
we
deal,
forgive you.
Deal.
Audience, will we forgive him? Let me know if we'll forgive him.
And he turned around to me and he said, my profile is now quite high, that I have had so many people approaching me. I am lending money, and I'm lending money at rebased valuations. I lend the money probably in 5 days. And in his view, and it is a very considered view, that it is a new marketplace in terms of his perception of value. of well-located
Yeah. Well, I think that
properties.
comes back down to what we talked about last time, which is fundamentals. And the fundamentals are, you disappeared there. Your broadband's definitely on the brink this time. It's definitely not my fault. It's definitely not my fault.
No, do you know what? It's a call. It's calls coming in. The
No, you see,
question is, I
well,
ask you, and
that
all
shows
our
activity. You're busy. But can I just reset the
all
question
our-
just for a second, Mark? Come on, let me get back in again. I feel like I'm being knocked all over the place in this round. Let me ask the following things. We talked last night quickly about job security. You mentioned it just now.
yeah.
You know, is there still a job for people in property? Are people's jobs at risk? You know, I've seen and I've heard from those people I know within the industry that most people are taking salary cuts. Most people have put their teams on furlough. Unfortunately, the way the furlough scheme has worked up till now is that you can go on furlough, but you can't do one stroke of work. Luckily, the government have seen sense and they're looking to bring in part-time furlough so they can slowly bring their staff back into work. Because the truth is, with social distancing, you can't just reopen your doors and everybody sit back at their desk next to each other again. That can't happen. So the part-time furlough scheme will give an opportunity for people to do flexi work. And they'll be supported until October. So that's probably one of the positive things that the government's doing. But I also talk to people and they say to me, they don't want to go back to their offices. They're afraid of travelling into town. They can't park a car. They can't seriously cycle all the way in.
Why can't you park a car?
Well, sorry, you can park a car, but what I meant was people don't want to bring their cars because of congestion charge, because of the cost of using cars. They're used to public transport. That's how they've got to work.
Do you want to read out the question?
Yeah. So Alan, who's a top property lawyer, is saying, I'm seeing down values on new builds on desktops. He's expecting to see new valuations coming through the next few days. It'll be interesting how these work out. So obviously, I agree with Alan. You know, if I was a valuer today, you're gonna put in some sort of clause. You're gonna put some sort of clause that says, do you know what? We live in uncertain times. I can't be absolutely accurate, and you're going to be conservative by nature. You're not going to push the boundaries of valuations.
It also depends on where it is, what it is, zone 1, 2, or 3. Is it prime? Is it which market are you talking about?
Well, I can go back to that report by CBRE that looked at what happened in March.
But did you see Savills today on the news? The chief executive Savills, Mike Ridley. He was saying we over the next 6 months we think value is going to be 5% down, maybe 10%, but over 5 years up 15%. Which goes back to what I said. We'll
That's
look
your
back
point. You'll see a short-term drop in values, and then you'll see demand come back. What was interesting on the CBRE conversation was that prime is always going to be prime. Hi, Sharpie. Good to see you. Lovely for you to join.
James,
and that's the reality. You know, you're London-centric. You deal with trophy assets. They don't come up that often, do they?
Yeah.
But when they do come up, there's demand. There's lack of stock, and lack of stock has always driven values in one direction, and that's always up.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. James says retail values cannot be the same so long as there is social distancing.
100%.
Customers aren't going to queue outside stores for a discretionary purchase in the same way they go to a supermarket. You're absolutely right. But you know what I heard recently? It was very interesting. You know, is retail finished? You know, is the retail landscape going to change forever? And what I do think will change is I don't think retailers are going to allow the landlords to lock them in to long-term leases, to guaranteed growth throughout the term, maybe even linked to RPI, RPIX. I think there will be a move for shorter-term leases with breaks that gives the retailer the opportunity to walk away if the business turns down, or share the risk with turnover rents.
Nick Capstick-Dale comes out with a statement which I agree with. Low interest rates will maintain strength in investment yields, which actually brings me on to, if you take what Nick says, and he's right and he's wrong, he's definitely right. Massive correlation between interest rates and property investment value. Massive correlation. But also you have to bear in mind the liquidity within the banks. In other words, what is the rate the money is being lent at? What is the margin? What does market dictate? Now, what I wanted to come on to was how we manipulate, and I was talking about coming back strongly the economy within 2 years, how the government manipulates or the Treasury stroke Bank of England, the market, and that is quantitative easing. Quantitative easing low cost money, which goes back kind of to where Nick was, and reflate of an economy. And actually, if we look at '09, the financial crisis,
there was no liquidity, there was no money. The banks couldn't lend because they didn't have the money to lend to.
So we did quantitative easing, and actually the truth is, we've done it since the First World War. You know, the war debt and so each time.
So why can't COVID-19 be equivalent to the war debt of the First World War or the war debt of the Second World War? Because the last thing we want to see is income tax raises and, you know, attacking the rich. That's the last thing we want to see in property, isn't it?
What I think you and I discussed before is we will not see austerity measures again.
Agreed.
We will not. And so the other thing, apart from quantitative easing, you get these massive projects.
So infrastructure.
Infrastructure projects.
It's one of the things I want to talk about. What can the government do?
HS2.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's more than HS2, isn't it? They're talking about building a bridge to Northern Ireland. Maybe eventually there will be a third runway at Heathrow. Unlikely because of climate emergency and pollution. But infrastructure, building some new roads, maybe even building all the cycle paths that we're going to ride our bicycles on in the future. Maybe routes for electric cars. We saw electric was thrown into the conversation a minute ago.
Here's the thing. So I've dusted down my Brompton. My wife has shown me on several occasions how to assemble and how to fold it. So I'm now out on my bike a reasonable amount, and
can we call you Brompton man then?
Yeah, well, Brompton, yes, and Condor man. And so I have visited my office.
So should I tell those who don't know about cycling that a Condor is a fabulous road bike? And Mark, the reason why he looks so svelte is because he's often seen either on his Brompton bike or his Condor bike.
Or I don't get fed properly at home. But anyway, that's another matter. So, the point I'm making, out on your bike, you see where London's slowly coming together again. Going back to what you were mentioning about transportation,
absolutely
coming back to work, and I think you'll see a momentum of coming back to work now. But it is.
But do people want to go back to work, or is it because they're being forced back to work by their employers?
No. I honestly, I don't believe employers are forcing people. CBRE, small firm of surveyors, have told their staff that they can probably stay away till January and work remotely.
Avison Young came out this week and said they told their entire staff they can all work from home until the end of the year. But let me tell you, once people get accustomed to working from home, why would they want to go back into an office?
Speaking from experience, it's great chatting to you here and seeing all our callers coming in and waving and sending us questions. Personally, I want to be out there. I want to be seeing buildings. I want to be interacting with my team, not just by Zoom. And I have to say, we as a company meet up on Zoom every Tuesday and Thursday, every Monday and Thursday morning. And we have to think about it. How can we be most constructive on our calls? And we make everyone have 3 topics now, new business to discuss, and actually it was very fruitful. But my message to people is about certainly our business is that we want to employ, we want to take on. We see this as a time if we can get someone of absolute quality. I'd rather go for it now, and it's a bit like
Jack. Send your CV to Mark as quick as possible. Anybody out there who has got the experience, wants to do deals, wants to make money, send your CVs to markshipman.co.uk.
And then going on to where do people go? You asked me, we were talking briefly yesterday about where do people go when they're looking for a job? How can they get work? And to a certain extent, I think people have to reinvent themselves. And I don't mean I was once in property and I'm going to sell double glazing or solar panels or whatever happens to be environmentally correct at the time. I mean that I can see people working on commission only, taking desks in someone's office and say splitting what they earn 50-50. I think it will take
Sharpie's just applied. He wants to know if he can apply for the job. Sharpie,
hi Grant.
You've been long in the business.
For Metris, one of my partners at Metris, our management business, Robin works on the letting side. And I tell you, this is interesting to bring up. On the letting side, we have a company called MetSpace, and MetSpace, and you and I talked about flexi leasing.
Yeah.
So these guys go into landlords and they bring in their designers and they say to the landlord, if you spend X on the floor, it's going to look like this. You're going to supply desks and you're going to end up doing a Cat B fit out, and you're going to have flexibility where your lease lengths are going to be between 1 and 3, more likely 1 year. And you actually end up getting a premium rent and filling up.
People always pay more for short-term flexibility.
And filling up within 4 weeks. You should see what they've achieved.
But you know what's sad? I tell you what's sad, Mark. The only reason why, well, two reasons probably. Two reasons why we have
at metspace.co.uk.
Okay, but the two reasons why we have long-term leases is to meet the banks. The banks will only lend if they've got security for income, and they think security for income means having a tenant on a long lease. You and I both know that if you've got the right product, the tenant will come, and you can obtain a good rent from that tenant, and you have a collaborative relationship with the tenant.
So hold on a second. So you touched upon tenants, and then you said quality of building. I think more than ever, it's going to be relationship banking. I think they're going to look at you as Nigel Burney. Are you a fit and proper person? What is your CV? What is your track record? What is your portfolio? And maybe it's not. Maybe it's still non-recourse lending. I don't think that will change. I don't think they're going to say, Nigel, all of a sudden we want your personal guarantees. We want your house.
Let me tell you, they've asked my entire life for those PGs.
Maybe
your always ask for PGs.
Maybe your car collection. Sorry, going back. Do you always give PGs?
Never give a PG. On principle.
The
deal stands up on its own, or it doesn't stand up. It shouldn't stand up because you support it. The deal should stand up because it merits the loan. It's as simple as that. But can I say something? Germany has long had a system with much shorter leases, especially when it comes to their retail products. Yeah. Why is it okay in Germany for banks to be able to lend if there's only a 3-year lease or a 5-year lease in place?
Well, that's the other thing. Again, Germany is a very, obviously it's a super, super strong economy, and it's a very conservative nation. They are not highly levered. But what I find odd in Germany is that you don't have the repairing obligations of the tenant.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? So there has to be a sinking fund that the landlord runs constantly to make sure he can put his building back into a decent state at the end.
It's more than that. On supermarkets and retail warehouses and sort of these single-story buildings, at the end of the leases, they are redeveloped.
Yeah. All I'm saying is I think this is time. If you can draw a line in the sand, now's the time to relook at the market, have more flexibility, have more collaboration between both the landlord and the tenant, but also between the landlord, tenant, and their funding source. I think it's absolutely time. Well, look, even Price agrees with me, absolutely agrees with Nigel. PGs are not required for deal stacks. Absolutely, because if banks will take anything, they will take security on the asset and a PG. If you give it to them, they'll take it. Why? Because they don't want to lose. They want to feel protected. And the funny thing is, they don't even lend you at the rate that the government set. They always have a healthy margin on what they lend.
Well, they have to make a profit, and they have to grow the balance sheet. Do you want to answer the next question?
So Cameron asks, pre-COVID-19, there was a rising accessibility to debt funding for development and acquisition, particularly in the senior living space. Do you think the investors, specifically private equity and SIFs houses, will still have that? I presume that appetite. Yes, so he goes on to say, an appetite in this sector. I don't think, and I've said this before about the care market, we have a shortage of accommodation on both two sides. Healthcare in terms of supportive care, and that means care homes or where it's end-of-life dependent care. There is a shortage of accommodation, and there's a shortage of accommodation and a shortage of quality assets. There is a desire by loads of REITs out there, American REITs, who've seen the growth of healthcare in their own country, also in Australia and New Zealand, where it's much more developed. Funds want assets in healthcare. So that isn't going to dissipate with the COVID-19. And the second part of that equation is senior living, and senior living more towards independent living with care wrapper, anything from age 55 onwards, whether it be a care village, there's plenty of good care village operators, or maybe the likes of McCarthy and Stone or Churchill, which are much more mundane apartments with a little bit of care wrapped around them. Cameron, to answer your question, Is there reputational damage? Not every single care home has suffered deaths through COVID-19. And if they have suffered deaths through COVID-19, it's probably because of the lack of PPE that they weren't supplied in the first place, or the support that they weren't given by the government, because the government didn't focus on those who needed the support, the most vulnerable. I don't think it's most care home operators have very good management systems, staff training, and employees who really care about their residents.
Nigel,
Sorry, I've gone off.
I'm going to have to move you on from there.
You move me on for a change, Mark, because I know I have to move you on.
It's quite a nice feeling. I feel like someone's giving me the power back. But Mark,
I think that round goes down to me. I'm taking round 4 as a winner for me.
Mark Riddell, quite rightly, has asked for our thoughts on landlords' union, because at the moment the tenants have all the power, and you, Nigel, are viewed as the wicked landlord who want your rent at all costs. And yet me, the humble tenants, I'm saying, how can I pay you rent? The government won't let me occupy my office. So therefore, why should I be paying you rent when I'm not allowed to use my office? Which I have to say is a fair argument.
It is a fair argument.
Before people shoot me down.
Yeah. But before you paint me as the bad landlord, I would like just to defend myself by saying, a good landlord is one that listens to their tenants. Yeah. So we go out of our way actually to develop buildings for particular occupiers, whether it be in the healthcare sector, whether it be in the dealership sector, whether it be offices or industrial or high tech, whatever it is that we do. But it's normally a partnership. We need to understand their requirements. We need to find the locations. We need to develop it in accordance with their wishes, and we work together. And we come to a decision on rents as a reflection of the market at the time. And if tenants have difficulties, we listen. There are a number of our tenants at the moment who aren't paying rent, and we understand it. Luckily we have either those buildings that are unencumbered, so there isn't an issue with the banks, or we've had to talk to our banks. I can think of some retail at the moment that we have Santander that are lending on, and the moment we mentioned that the tenants were unable to occupy or pay any rent, they just simply said, fine, we'll just suspend your responsibilities until they can. So it's all about collaboration. It's about talking to people.
Which I think is right, and that's what we do on the management with our tenants. We've got over 2,000 tenants. Now, what you and I also discussed briefly last night on our little warm-up show was insurance of loss of rent. And it's quite interesting because I told you there are a number of people believe that under certain insurance policies, there is an argument to say the insurance companies should be forking out the loss of rent.
The same insurance companies that have run a mile when they've looked at their policies to say that they would pay out in the event of a pandemic. Hiscox to be one of them, who, there's multiple claims going in at the moment, and they're saying, well, this is not what we envisaged, that the whole world would shut down. Can I just draw your attention to one question that Danny's asked?
We haven't gone back actually. Can we just very quickly finish off Mark Riddell? So turning it on its head, yes, Mark, I think, and now I am following two groups. One group you probably read about, Adam Coffer, I don't know if he's listening, that he's lobbying MPs, etc., and wrote his article in the Times and was vilified and trolled. Wicked landlords. It was a bit of a witch hunt. It's all about you rich people, and it was a very harsh article which has since backed down on. And then there is the British BPF that are also lobbying. I think James Birchall and others are with that group. And it's right. I think there is an issue that how can you pay your interest if you're not being paid your rent? And can you imagine you're a developer. Say you're a developer and an investor, so you've got to service your debt on your development. So you're taking your income from your investment, because none of this has happened in our lifetime. And you have to look back to the last pandemic in 1919, 1920, when this happened. So and actually in today's modern society, you would have thought that we'd have been so well prepared from Ebola, SARS, and all the other.
Mark, do you know what the biggest mistake always is? Assumption. To assume anything.
UK and the US was so.
Listen, I live in the development world, and we can never assume anything. It's all about the details. It's all about looking into, what your risks are, and how you can control those or how you can deal with those. Can I just pick up a couple of points that have come in, which is Scott's point, not every tenant is collaborating. You're right. You know, I've seen colleagues of mine and good friends of mine who have a lot of leisure property, and they've just had blanket letters saying, sorry, we're closed, we're not paying your rent, and we'll get back to you in the future when we think about it. So I think there are a lot of companies who are able to pay rent and not just walk away from obligations straight away, who have made the decision, cash preservation, therefore we're not paying anything. No outgoings, the government's paying our staff furlough, so end of.
So the protection eventually comes off the tenant, and people will have to sit down and sit across the table
and have a conversation and talk to each other and work out a deal. But what's interesting is it comes back to fundamentals, doesn't it? So if you don't get on with your tenant and they don't pay your rent and eventually you get your premises back, if you've got the right premises, so you've always invested in the right stock, in the right location, the chances are you will relet it. You'll relet it. It may not be at the same rents, it may not be at the same yield value, but that will happen. If, however, you don't really understand, you know, the intricacies of property investment and development, you would have invested in areas where they won't come back for a long, long time. And that's normally what happens, isn't it?
So moving on from your point, one of my best friends and a founding partner of Michael Elliott is a chap called David Saul, Business Environment Group, BEG. Very good service office operator. They probably operate at about 800,000 feet in London. So they're sizable. Now, he has a success rate of about 87%. And in his industry, in service offices, he collects monthly. So he has people paying rent, not an occupation. And do you know why that is? It's because he is such a great landlord. He calls them his customers.
Yeah.
How do I serve my customer? So he has longevity of tenants. They actually stay within.
I have to tell you, Mark, in our game, I think more often than not, I can't think of the last occasion where we haven't, we work with companies and individuals on repeat business. So if, for example, we're building one healthcare care home for, say, 75 beds somewhere in the southeast, the chances are we've got 2 or 3 other projects on with the same operator. Why? Because it's a partnership, because we're working together. They're operating from our property, but we're providing the property that suits their operation. So if you're not talking or listening to your tenants who are your income stream, who support your business, then there's something wrong with you. You're not an entrepreneur. You're not somebody who is going to last long.
And as you and I have said before, also there could be a trade-off. You could give them rent-free in exchange for a longer lease or a better covenant or a pre-agree a rent review.
Yeah.
There are sometimes ways.
There's always extenuating circumstances, so you can have that conversation. Can I go back to Danny's question, because I feel like you've sidelined Danny, and I'd like to give him the chance we can just quickly answer his question. There is no doubt the real estate market will take a hit, but unlike other recessions, many are predicting a sharp V-shaped recovery once the issue with this pandemic is resolved, albeit we said earlier it may not be resolved. Do you agree? Mark, do you agree with Danny or not?
Well, last Thursday, the Bank of England said that we discussed that the economy this year will shrink, the GDP will shrink by 14%, and next year will rise by 15%. So that in definition means, and we'll be out of recession next year, and that by definition means there will be a V-shaped recovery, albeit it was described as a V with a slightly shorter tail, whatever that means. But so it's not a symmetrical V. Danny, in my opinion, that will happen, and it may take for normality to resume. And normality covers a whole host of areas, including holidays, flying, cruise lines, hospitality sector, full stop. So it could take as long as 2 years, but yes, I expect a bounce back. And as I touched on earlier when we first came on, that fear itself creates an overreaction.
I agree.
And
if you want to ask me the question, Mark, you can ask me that same question that Danny's asked if you like. I'm happy to answer it.
No, let's move on.
Okay. I'm going to answer anyway because because I'm just going to, because I'm still in this round, luckily, and it's a very quick answer, which is to be a developer and an investor, you have to be optimistic. So as an optimist, one would like to think that the fundamentals of property and demand in this country would ensure that the right sectors will come back in a V shape. There may be certain sectors that don't, but I think majority of sectors will come back. And I think those sectors, such as residential, where there's a huge lack of stock, both normal general residential sales and also on the care and senior living side, they will come back with a big bounce. So can I just ask you a couple of questions, Mark? Because I had a whole list of questions. I've noticed we're over halfway through.
And I have to go. I have to go literally at 4 p.m.
Okay, so just so everybody knows who's on live with us at the moment, you know, we did have a slight technical issue, 5 minutes to go before last week's session finished, and that was a broadband issue. So apologies, BT have been chasing for it. But if it happens again, we will resume. If it happens quickly, we will get back on. But at 4 o'clock, Mark, because he's such a busy man, will be out there doing some deals. So Mark, let's just talk about...
or save deals, yeah.
Or save deals, yeah. Let's just talk about the leisure industry, because a couple of people have talked about hotels. I want to talk a bit more about restaurants and bars and clubs and everything. And Mark, who's listening in, obviously knows an awful lot about the club business. Social distancing is going to change, certainly in the short term and maybe in the medium term, how people can enjoy, if they can at all, the ability to visit restaurants, pubs, bars, clubs. How is that sector going to survive without government support being there along the whole journey? I can't see how it can. I'd be interested for your views.
Short term it won't, longer term it will come back. And it may be rents are rebased, maybe debts are written off. So I was approached by quite a big bank yesterday that they want to co-invest with clients and lend into that sector of big pub portfolios, because the belief is there must be some opportunities out there with pub portfolios. So turnover is going to be right down for a period of time until, I suppose, we've got herd immunity, which is what I mentioned before, that we're going to have to end up.
It's interesting. Not that I'm biased, but one of my children who works in the hospitality industry has just asked the question: how do you think social distancing will work in the kitchen of the hotels or restaurants? How's it going to happen? They all work side by side.
It's impossible. It's impossible. The average size of a kitchen in an average size of a restaurant, where you would, how many staff you'd have normally in a small restaurant? At least five.
Oh, at least half a dozen. Absolutely.
I'd say half a dozen. And how many square feet would you say one of these kitchens? 300-400 feet maximum. Maximum. And that heat, the sweat.
Yeah.
Could it be a dark kitchen as supply? I mean, I couldn't answer that. What I could tell you at the moment, I see the bigger high-end restaurants now doing a delivery service. So, Mezzasi or Cipriani, whatever it's called today, and Hakkasan and all these brands using an online delivery service called Supper, and other higher end and restaurants are sort of following this course. And I think someone mentioned about Goodman's serving up boxes. So because the view is that high-end food, gourmet food, doesn't travel in a box very well, so it becomes stewed, overcooked, cold taste, whatever.
Well, so I think I said to you last week that Angela Hartnett came out saying that, how can you offer a Michelin star service and experience if the restaurant's half empty because of social distancing? It's impossible. And she thinks that this is the opportunity that restaurants can actually talk to their landlords and actually say, listen, the rents you've squeezed out of us before, they're far too high. They need to be reset. There's a couple more interesting questions that come in, and I'm also really conscious of time. There's only just over 20 minutes left. Can I ask you, Mark, Finn & Co, and I'm often trying to buy stuff from Finn & Co. Very unfortunately, they always seem to be doing such a good job for their own clients that they get best price for everything. So probably not for me, but their question is, what's our views on the future of co-living? Now, I think co-living is a great asset class, because I think you need to step up between the time when people leave university as students and the qualities we've seen of student accommodation has improved immeasurably since my days as a student, where really you wouldn't want to stay. It was a hovel at best. And now every room is ensuite, TV, Sky, got your little Wi-Fi package, and then they need a natural improvement from that to the ability to then obviously afford to rent a flat or buy a flat once they get their professional job. So co-living, I think, is a great asset class. I think it's misunderstood by most local authorities at the moment.
I've got another sort of, I've got shared ownership, which I think is possibly more interesting. So if you went to Singapore, let's say, and you finished uni, you got your first job. Obviously, Singapore probably pays a lot better. The population's only 5 million. There's zero unemployment. But what happens is the government has a shared ownership 50-50, and that is in effect your equity to get you on a ladder.
Yeah.
And it makes everything more affordable. And they've done a lot of shared ownership, and it's more your area than mine.
Yeah.
And we spoke about Hammersmith and Fulham doing shared ownership.
I think shared ownership is a great product because it bridges the gap for those who can't afford to purchase. There was a question that came in before about a residential development in East London. It was saying about, there's completions happening because of Help to Buy. So Help to Buy has gone a long way to secure residential sales, but obviously it's capped at a certain level, which unfortunately puts a lot of development closer into London, out of the reach of anybody. Shared ownership, though, has always had a really bad brand. People don't want to think that they can go and buy a residential unit under a shared ownership scheme. But I was talking to one of the housing associations, which is One Housing Group, one of the largest ones in London, owns most of King's Cross, Camden. And they did a scheme in King's Cross, which was both private sale and affordable. And in the affordable segment, they did an awful lot of shared ownership. But effectively, the unit you were getting on shared ownership in King's Cross was identical to the unit you would have got if you bought it as a private sale, other than you were in a block that was specifically shared ownership. And you could get in and secure that for 25% of the value of the unit. Why would you not do it? Why wouldn't you? Of course you would.
It's a great deal.
But it's all about branding and marketing. And I don't think HAs have really got their act together in being able to sell the message of shared ownership to the marketplace. But I don't think it's here to stay, and I think it's a great way forward. But I also think there is a place for co-living, because the one thing co-living will do is it's a short-term rental model, isn't it? So you're in there for 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. Your shared ownership, you're in there for the long haul because you want to ladder up and eventually buy out your unit.
I mean, short-term people saying co-living, pandemic. Anyway, can we go back quickly to Oliver Kaufman? Oliver has got a bee in his bonnet that he's worried about where the bounce back's coming from. Corporate's not taking space. Ollie, offices is my thing. I think yours is more retail. What we've got at the moment, and I've got the stats somewhere, is an undersupply of offices. There are not many spec schemes out there. So London, for quality grade A offices, there is an acute shortage. So what we found is the law firms, etc., and many other big corporate occupiers were squeezed into their space. Not just that, people's occupation today, they do not want bench seating. They want space. And actually, you listen to some hedge fund managers who are not the best people to listen to, because they are in the uber high-end echelons of the marketplace, high rents, very self-indulgent officers. But they've suddenly turned around and said, oh, you know what, working from home, I get a lot more done because I've got a very nice home and it's peace and quiet. So what that translates to, people want more space and they want it slightly quieter. So in my opinion, longer leases in a low interest rate environment, which Nick Capstick-Dale alluded to, creates yield compression. So if I've got a WALT, at least of say 5 to 10 years, which is quite long on a good quality A grade building, those are going up in value. And so that was...
Can I support that? Absolutely. Yeah, I can support that in everything you've just said. So what's interesting is we've got a scheme where we hope to start on site in January next year, which will deliver over 110,000 square feet of grade A offices and 154 apartments in a 23-storey tower. And it's in Watford. The team of advisors are listening into this call, so thank you for joining us. But what I was going to say is, what's interesting is when we've been talking about how we're going to lease that kind of space, and can we still lease it at the same rents with the same incentive packages that we thought of now, that we thought of about 6 months ago? And the reality is, there is a dearth of quality, grade A office accommodation, not just in Watford, but in the whole northwest quadrant of London. And what is more likely to happen is the fallout from COVID-19, with all those big occupiers who are in the city and the West End, where the rents, the service charges, and the rates are colossal, are talking about doing hub and spoke, maintaining capacity in town, but actually having more local representation, so that Their staff don't have to get on the underground. They may be able to walk to work, cycle to work, or drive to work and find somewhere to park, and actually keep that work-life balance. That has probably been the best thing that has come out of COVID-19. The fact that you and I can have this conversation, we've had probably over 150, 200 people listen in at points during our conversation. We've adapted, haven't we? And we've adapted really quickly to this way of working. And just one last point I'll get back in, which is you mentioned that you have to have a call with your colleagues, 3 times a week, and you have to have 3 things to talk about.
Yeah.
I've got to tell you, my team and I have never been busier than we have during COVID-19. And the best bit of it has been that we've had access to all of our consultants, to all the people that we're dealing with, whether they be vendors or landlords or whoever, and they've all been available. So we've had constructive conversations. We've moved our projects along. We've got planning consent already bagged on one scheme. We've got another scheme going to virtual committee next week. We have been incredibly busy, and we've operated at probably a bigger capacity than what we would have done had we gone into offices in Dover Street. So
I still like my office. I still like my office. I prefer to be in my office. I don't. I got on very well with my wife and kids, but I like my office. I like to.
And I'm not saying we won't go back to our offices, but I do think there will be a compromise between those that will go back to central London or to major cities, and those who will be more peripheral and work in the suburbs.
I tell you what I found. Different, and that is from a personal point. I'm less stressed. Why? Because my diary is usually ram-packed. I'm rushing around to meet people. I wish they'd come to me, but I'm.
But now they do. They come to you virtually. They come to you virtually.
And that's true. But the point is, I get stressed if I'm late, and I'm often 5 minutes late. It's just the way, and I run to the meetings. So from that point, it's actually.
Well, at least you're on time. At least you're on time though when you run to your meetings. I have the best reputation of always being late, apart from when I'm doing IG Live and then
actually now you say that that kind of adds up.
Yeah,
because you and I have met for lunch a few times.
I know, and that was me trying to find a parking space. Do you remember? Oh my god, how late could you be? Can I just address a couple of the questions, because I'm also conscious there's only 15 minutes to go and there's still a lot of questions I haven't asked you. So Jack says he thinks the challenge with shared ownership on that conversation we're having is fundamentally pricey, and he could well be right. Henshaw and partners say that they think the shared ownership it works, but it's British pride when you wanted to own your own home rather than any percentage of it.
Yeah,
that's just got down to marketing and knowledge. I don't think people really understand, the shared ownership model. I don't think there's enough publicity about it, enough understanding. I think that will change though.
And Nick is right. When you work from home, you're generally off the pace, i.e. you're not as sharp as you used to. And by the way, we're coming back to the office. We're working out social distancing and all the rest of it.
Can you all fit in? Do you need extra space?
Do you know what? And herein lies the problem. We have breakout space. We have a boardroom. So we go, well, he'll go in the boardroom. He'll go in the boardroom. And all of a sudden you lose that advantage for sitting in open plan as a think tank and bouncing ideas off.
But isn't that the core function of agency? Being together, bouncing ideas.
So what we all end up doing is having a rota system and who comes in and when. And people will have to get to our office without going on the tube. That's fact. Hi, George. George Collins has joined. That's a fact. We are not going to be... and correct me if I'm wrong. So I look at Sweden, which has never had lockdown.
I know.
And their economy only shrank 0.3. But that was the first quarter, end of March 31st, and our lockdown started 23rd of March.
That was a brave decision, wasn't it? That was a brave decision not to do lockdown.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have a tube network like we do they?
But they also don't have 11 or 12 million people living in one city on top of each other. And when you think about it, most of the crisis of COVID-19 is in London. Densely populated areas. Yeah. That's the problem. And what's really sad and surprising to see, the moment our Prime Minister advocated that people should start to go back to their offices, the underground was packed and people weren't separating and they weren't wearing face masks or any kind of covering. And you think to yourself, well, I thought we're meant to be avoiding a second wave of infection.
Can I ask any of our listeners out there, does anyone feel that they want to get COVID-19 and just become immune and get it out of the way? Is anyone feeling that confident? Because as we've seen it affects all the people.
It's
Overweight.
indiscriminate. It's indiscriminate, though, isn't it? It's
No,
indiscriminate.
it's not.
Well,
It's not.
yes,
It's
it
not. It's
attacks
not.
people who are obese. Yes, it attacks people who've got underlying health
Mixed race.
issues.
It attacks. It's physically shown that if you look at the percentage, the percentage who have had it.
Daniel says yes, please. In fact, my wife's just joined us, and she wants to have it too. So does Imogen. I can't believe it. Freya says she's already had it.
I've asked the most popular question. I've asked the most.
I think Freya could actually be Howard Lupton, one of our lawyers. So if it is Howard, I'm sorry you had it already, and hopefully you made a full recovery.
Nigel, I've got a question.
Yes.
What's your favourite book?
Very good question. The Hobbit, if I'm honest. The Hobbit.
I read similarity between yourself and.
Yeah, no, I read The Hobbit as a kid.
So it's something to do with your height, or
it could be. It could be.
I read The Hobbit as a kid.
As a kid, and hi Howard, I thought it was you. And Imogen.
Thank you, Mark Riddell. By the way, there you go. Under 45s was 404 out of 36,590. I rest my case.
And that could be the knockout blow. But I've got 11 minutes to see if I can survive the next 2 rounds.
Favorite film.
But that doesn't show.
Favorite film.
Favourite film? Oh, that's a very good one.
Of all time.
Of all time, Dr. Zhivago.
Oh my God. Sorry.
I know. Oh, I have another one. I have Love Story as well. But I know
you have
my
a love
wife
story as well. What
can I have two? What can I have two?
A love story.
Okay. All right. Being a Spurs fan, let me ask you, because I'm not a Spurs fan and I can't remember half your team. Who's your favourite player? Come on.
Of all time?
Of all time, who's put on a Spurs shirt?
Glenn Hoddle.
I knew you were going to say that because he's probably mine too. But then he was, manager of Chelsea. So he went on to better things, didn't he? He managed the best club in the world.
No.
Okay. So Mark, as we're talking personal things, then most favourite thing to do?
Cycle.
Spend time with your family. Come on.
I meant spend time with my family.
You're lucky Belinda's not listening, aren't you? But she may listen to the recording. I've got my wife and children listening in, and the family. So no, but they know that's true because they know me, and that's I can't do anything nicer. And that's the one thing, if I'm honest.
Actually, you know what my favourite? Okay, got it. Favourite thing to do is come home to my warm and loving family after a hard day's graft.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Thank you.
It
didn't take me long to come out with it, though.
No, it took a while, but hopefully Belinda when he listened to the recording after.
Guys, any more questions?
Yeah. So there's 9 minutes to go. There's an awful lot of things we haven't covered. So, Mark and Nigel says, Sophia, how are you filling your spare time, and have you got any interesting hobbies? Come on, Mark. How are you filling your spare time? And do you have any spare time between doing all these deals and spending time with your family?
I'm working out every day.
Yeah.
And so if we talk about how do we deal with the position we're in, I firmly have the opinion it's a healthy body, healthy mind. If you look after yourself, your body, your heart, your calorie count. I don't mean calorie count. I mean just your well-being. It is so important.
That's so important. But you know what? That takes effort. And it's interesting you should say that because I think, and some of the questions that we've talked about and answered, I think that when we're talking about job creation or people having their jobs at risk, I think there are an awful lot of people who will realise that the qualities that they need to survive these types of pandemics is resilience, both mentally and physically, as you said, to keep yourself in good shape, but also self-reliance. I think a lot of people are looking for staff, looking at their colleagues and thinking, who's been the most productive during this period? We've had issues working from home, but have they got on with it? Have they been as productive?
You've got to have the right mindset, and it's easy when you are locked down for depression, for mental illness. If you're on your own, you have no outside space. It must be horrendous. I mean, we've been joking around a little bit in the last few minutes, but and Joel, I meant no disrespect. I think your wife, a nurse, the frontliners, they're just the most incredible people.
But Mark, do you know what I love? Today is Thursday, and apart from IG Live at 3 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock in the evening. When I walk out my front door, and all I hear is people banging saucepans,
whistling,
singing,
screaming, clapping.
fireworks.
I told you
It's
2 weeks
incredible.
ago.
The community spirit.
We had an
is
ambulance. We had an ambulance go past slowly, and it was so emotional. We're cheering them, clapping, they're waving back. We're all in this together. But
Absolutely.
we aren't putting our lives on the line.
No. And I have to tell you that I also have friends who are either doctors or nurses or working in the NHS, even people, you take it across the board. I love walking around. I go out for my walk every day to keep myself sane. And the posters that the kids have drawn, or the bricks that have been coloured with rainbows, and the thank yous. But the thank yous aren't just to the NHS, are they, Mark? They're to the dustman, the refuse collectors, they're to the delivery, the postman,
key workers.
And do you know what I haven't missed? I haven't missed football, because I haven't missed all of those people kicking a ball in the back of a net, being paid a fortune, and for once,
but
the people who need recognition have actually got it, and it's fantastic.
Okay, can you summarise the positives that is going to come out of this pandemic?
Okay, so if there be positives, I think the world will never assume that it will never happen again. They will actually create some kind of agency that will stockpile, whether it be PPE, whether it be working to different potential vaccines on different potential viruses, all of those things.
Organization. What do
well,
they
we have
do?
a World Health Organization, but nobody listens to them, and they didn't have the power. China.
Well, actually, the truth is, they were allowed into China and told us it wasn't.
There was never going to be a pandemic, and then the whole world went down with it.
Okay,
and the world's still going down with it.
Do you know what my biggest thing on this is? The NHS.
Yeah, absolutely. They will never be underfunded again, will they?
If you said to me, there is an NHS tax, that's what it is, you'd happily pay it, and you'd hope that it is fully funded, it'd be more efficient, and work better for everyone.
Okay, so there's a couple of things, Mark. 100% agree with you. I never want to see the NHS, but not just the NHS, all of our emergency services, firemen, policemen, as you said, the doctors, the nurses.
Craig, you're my favourite shooting agent.
Yeah, all of those need to be supported. So we've just been told there's 5 minutes left, Mark. A couple of quick questions for you, just to finish off our debate.
I Adam Coffer. Sorry.
June quarter is fast approaching.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a bloodbath? Is it going to be a bloodbath? And is that going to be what really is the final nail in the coffin? That will bring lots of landlords down because their tenants aren't paying. The banks will suddenly think, wow, that's 2 quarters missed. We're not going to be supportive anymore. How afraid are you of June quarter date?
If you'd asked me on the March quarter date and talked about not getting the rent in June, I would have been scared to death. I would have been uber concerned. I am still extremely concerned, but I think as landlords of 6 billion of London property, we have now communicated with every single tenant. We know where everyone stands. We've had tenants reach out to us and tell us their problems, etc. I think to be fully prepared, and to be prepared both for the lending institutions and the tenants in advance, I think there is a bit more comfort all round. Because, most assets stand on their own. It's not just about collecting the rent. They are key buildings. They are in reasonable locations. They will stand the test of time. And I think what we've got to do is we look at, as we go through this start to finish, let's just say it's 12 months. We look at the 12 months. We look at the cost of reduced rent, of the interest, and we somehow have to build it into the balance sheet. And I'm not talking about into as a public company. I'm talking about the average investor. I think that people have had long enough to make provisions and know what's ahead and know what you can work with them.
So, Mark, there is 1 minute 20 seconds left. So I'm going to let you have the final word, as you've been the most incredible guest, and I've enjoyed every minute of this week.
I have tried to interview you a bit as well.
You have. But can I just say, I want to thank everybody who has tuned in over the last 3 weeks. I'm hopeful that you found it informative and of interest. This will go to the NL Property live story for 24 hours. So if you want to watch it again, or you want to show it to anybody or share it, we would love you to share it as many times as possible. But Mark, I think Sophia wants us to leave things on a positive note. I am an optimist. We are out there hunting for deals. We're still looking to expand across all the sectors that we operate in. And fundamentally, property is a fantastic asset class and one that people should invest in, provided they know the fundamentals about property. But I'm going to leave the last 30 seconds to my honoured guest. Over to you, Mark.
As I touched on before, it's very cyclical. I think the biggest takeaway we're going to have, I hope, from this is that fear plays a terrible thing. Confidence about the future, stay calm, and just hold your position, hold your nerve. It will come back, and this will be a distant memory.
Perfect. And there's 5 seconds to go, so it's a thank you from me. It's a thank you from Mark.
It's good night.